Listen, laugh, and learn.
You have to drill that target audience.
It's the Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash.
Until they are consuming your product, not because they love it, but because they can't escape.
We're all business.
Drill, baby, no more pussyfooting around.
Except when we're not.
Hey, Happy New Year. Happy
Almost.
New Year.
Almost.
We're on our holiday set, our Christmas set, our Telluride set.
Last day in Telluride.
It's our last day.
Turn in.
That's the way it is. There's our last day in Telluride. It's the last day of the year. And this is the first time in our 8 years that we've actually done a show on New Year's Eve.
Yes, it's always been day before, day after. This year the holiday falls right when we could do it.
So we want to thank everyone for staying with us this year, and we'll be around next year. Thanks to our partner Volkswagen has decided to continue with us for another year into 2017, and we have lots in store and some changes I think along the way. Don't you think? You're nodding your head.
I'm nodding my head because you and I have a lot of plans.
A lot of plans.
And we're going to see what we could do. But a lot of it revolves around of giving the socks away.
Yeah. And we hope
that's a complexity they were hoping to solve.
we hope everyone enjoyed our stab at a live show last week, and hopefully we'll be doing that more often than not in the future, which relates to the sock issue as well, giving socks away and maintaining that database. Also, you can always follow along with us on any of our social media, which is Focus Group Radio, and also along on iTunes, SoundCloud, Apple TV through the Reverie app. And did I forget anything? I never do the
Stitcher and Google
Play. What is it?
Well, Stitcher would be for the Android phones. That's kind of their version of the.
So because I don't have an Android phone, I'm not paying attention.
Yeah, you get it through the podcast, Apple's podcast feature.
And we've already started booking our guests for 2017 too, so we're excited about what we have in store. But we want to finish out the new year. And later in the show, John and I are going to share some New Year's resolutions, but we have a guest joining us today.
A returning guest.
And who is that, Mr. Nash?
Cathy Renna, who is the managing partner of Target Q, which is a small niche PR firm, but she's been with the LGBT community for years,
right.
Notably with GLAAD, and then beyond that. So she's going to be coming on to talk to us about the look back at the year that was, but also the last 8 years in terms of LGBT rights and all the changes that have happened with the Obama administration. And she'll probably want to talk a little bit about the incoming administration. But you and I talked about this at lunch earlier. I almost don't want to say anything because it's like, let's just see what happens.
Yeah, well, we don't.
You gotta judge it.
I do want to ask her a pointed question though about she had stirred some controversy immediately doing an essay for the Huffington Post about a vote for Trump was considered, or she considers it a hate crime. And that's pretty strong language. So I think whether you agree with it or not, I think that'll also open up some discussion points as to why she feels that way or why we should feel that way.
We'll leave our opinions
till
she comes in, because I wonder where we didn't talk about it, so I'll be curious to see where you fall on that side.
I don't know. So that's. Did you have a Merry Christmas? You were
family
up in the rural area.
We had dinner for my mom and her husband and my oldest sister and Herb, her husband, who always send their regards. They know Tim very well. My sister does, and so does Herb.
Back in the day when we used to have the parties at Sirius in the lobby, your sister was quite the.
She is great.
Quite the cat's meow.
Well, and she also had she had
eyes for Matt.
Matt had that blue velour short sleeve shirt on. His guns were popping because he's got the body. And then Bob's mother, Jean, came up from Jersey, and his sister came over from Boston. And when we had it at the house, it was a lot of fun. It was a good. I
wish we had the video for. I was looking at one of our.
Oh, you mean the Sirius?
Original Christmas shows at Sirius.
The Fishbowl.
So we had Michael Kelly Cataldi who sang, and he had Bette Midler's accompanist, Tom Adams, along with Eddie Bruce, who's a well-known musician. Not only that, we had the Beekman Boys. We had Lisa Birnbach from the Preppy Handbook. We had Stuart Elliott from the New York Times. We had the Cupcake Guy.
Lisa Birnbach brought...
The guy from Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Delivers the pizza.
Yeah, and of course I forgot.
That was his claim to fame. And he was our first celebrity death.
Our first dead guest.
Our first dead... Well, he was alive when we had him, but he died later. So.
Who was our second dead guest, remember?
Yeah, why do
I was disgusted.
Oh, Gene Nidich, the founder of Weight Watchers. Boy, guys... We arranged to interview Jean Nidich. She was 92 or 90 at the time.
Something.
And
Either a one before it or
it had to
behind
be
it.
at 10:04 and 30 seconds because she was going to be good for the next 20 minutes until, like 10:25 or something. And Tim says, Gene, how did you get the idea for Weight Watchers? I got on the bus and took the train and went to the Board of Health. And I said, where is the meeting for fat people?
It was like,
And we
dentures were clicking. And I was sweating. Do you remember how much I was sweating?
The obesity clinic.
It was a New Year's show.
Yeah,
I was sweating because you had her manager was there, her attorney.
Watching us.
And I didn't want to be disrespectful, but I was trying not to laugh because every time she would start in, and then I'm trying to hold it in, try not to look at John because that's the worst thing. When we were on the radio, when we'd get some of these guests,
we could look at each other.
We could turn away. And we can't do it so much now on this format with the video format, but on audio we could still do it. But I was trying not to look at you because I was sweating. Oh my God!
Your brow was so shiny after about 5 minutes, and I kept turning, and you knew I was turning to look at you to make you laugh. And
then we had the guy. This is almost we should have done a retrospective. We had the guy who didn't want to have any direct questions.
Oh! He was the guy he was the advertising
Asperger's.
guy who wrote a book,
Yeah.
a spy novel dedicated to his son who had passed away. He's sitting there like a popsicle in the chair, and I go to the bath. I leave before this. We had like 10 minutes before we were on air. Right as I come back, you open the door, which was like an airlock. The doors there used to have these really big soundproof doors, and you're like, "You're not going to believe this." Tell me what.
So he says, I start asking him questions while you're in the restroom, here's how the interview is going to flow. Here's our timing. He said, well, I really prefer it if you don't ask me any direct questions.
And he's sitting in a chair getting ready to be interviewed on a show.
Okay. That and the stutterer. I mean, we've had some over the years.
Yeah, the stutterer, super cool guy, wrote a great book on typography. You knew I loved typography because I studied it in college.
That was one of those. I let you do it, right? Because I would never.
We come in to do the thing, and the press agent comes in, and he comes in, sits down. Hello. He's British, and we only got little hello. How are you? Where do I sit? Here's the mic. And then Tim starts asking him questions, and you kicked it off by just saying, "Hey, what's your favorite typeface?"
My
favorite face is
Palatino. Now we got 45 minutes of this, and we said to and I'm looking at my watch. I'm looking at you. This was one when I just bore, and you would not look at me. I was glaring at you like UMF, Mr. Nash.
Well, I didn't know.
Well, I know you didn't know, but you would have thought the publicist, because John says, "Oh, his schedule's wide open. Nobody's booked him. We can have him anytime we want."
Well, now we know
booked the guy with a severe stutter. It was a great show.
It ended up being not a bad interview, so.
I know we'll be in trouble for making fun. We got in trouble for making fun of accents once before. We got in trouble for our Thanksgiving show. We'll get in trouble for this, too. We weren't making fun of somebody who stuttered.
We're not making fun of him. We're making fun of our predicament of not knowing how to handle a certain situation because no one told us anything. And if you knew in advance, we would have either... I don't know how you change it, by the way.
So as Donald Trump says, the 400-pound guy in his bed in his parents' basement. I don't need to hear the email about how disrespectful we were. Right?
It's good to have these reminiscences at this time of year because it's the end of the... I can't believe how fast it went.
Well, I was thinking about it on the train up that it's somewhat... I guess I'll say remarkable that we survived this year. As everybody knows, we... OutQ, there was a demise of OutQ at SiriusXM, which we were Saturday, one of the only live shows on the weekend, and all set to maybe not continue the focus group, but we were able to. Our sponsor stayed by us, Volkswagen in particular, and wanted to see what we were going to do next. And to John's credit, John found a studio and got us up and going, and here we
should
are.
turn on the booth. Do you guys have the
boys?
booth? Do you have the booth cam running?
We used to have the girls. Now we've got the boys. John waved
John.
to everybody, so everyone knows who John is.
It's John, and then on the left we have Garrett. And these guys, thank you. We want to thank you. You guys have been fantastic this year. They make everything happen, all the graphics.
It's like Howard Stern. They're set off, you know. Like,
well, in reality, there should be no glass there. They should have like a banquette, and we should be able to just talk to them.
Well, before we get, so I went to Connecticut where the past is still present. I went to go see the family and up to Southbury. Which have you been through Southbury?
Yeah, it's
ridiculous. It's going to be
overbuilt.
Brookfield in a second. They've overbuilt it. It's impossible to get through the other end of town. They put a huge movie theater next to the post office.
That's pretty recent, actually. Yeah. That was the.
Well, they're still building it.
It was the pumpkin patch.
The pumpkin patch across the street is mall.
Yeah, it's
sad. It's sad, but Connecticut, still there.
Yeah. When we grew up in those two towns were very rural, and we had families that had farms.
Yeah. Flashing light or when the first traffic light went in, it was a big deal.
Yeah.
Now it's like I don't know what you would call
You
it.
can't go back, Timmy. You can't go back.
Yeah. So what caught your eye this week?
All right. What caught my eye is an industry that hopefully doesn't change with the new administration.
What caught
But
your eye? Here's what Tim and John found.
You got to do the.
What caught your eye? Here's what Tim and John found.
thank you, Garrett. I run right over the imaging. Headline: A cannabis marketing company is bringing pot parties to the elderly. A cannabis marketing firm is bringing pot parties to the elderly. In April 2015, a woman named Carrie Tice was despairing over her 80-year-old mother's advancing Alzheimer's when a caregiver at her senior center in California recommended giving her a topical dose of marijuana. So it would be like an oil that you might rub into your skin.
What's that do?
I'm not sure how that works from that
Did I
absorption.
put it on my knee?
I don't know that it does pain
help?
relief. Oh. Many other drugs had failed, but the marijuana made her feel better immediately. She was more alert, more active, and looked younger. By October last year, she had moved out of the senior center, and this year she moved in with her daughter in Mill Valley. And so this woman, Carrie Tice, says, the change in my mom was so remarkable that I wanted to shout it from the mountaintops. And as a result of this, she quit her job at Ubisoft, which is a very popular game maker. She's been there for 20 years, and she began a company called Octavia. And it's designed to help older seniors get doctor recommendations online and order weed products. I love when they put that, weed products, to ease their pain and help them sleep. The service is needed because seniors often aren't familiar with the many varieties of weed that can be used. Pot is for sale in many forms: flowers, edibles, oils. By the way, the flowers and the oils, I have no idea. I have no idea what that is.
Tea?
Yeah. Do you guys know what that is?
Yeah, flour's just like a bud, just a nugget.
What do you do with it?
You smoke it. You put it in a pipe and smoke it.
Like the regular kind of.
Yeah, regular kind of weed.
Okay.
Do you know if I rub the topical on my knee, if it will help?
I don't know that, actually.
Well, let's try it.
Yeah, we could try it.
Well, we have to be in Colorado, California, or some state where you can get
Remember
it.
the guy we had on that he said his elderly mom.
Mother responded to. So she made cookies for herself. Edibles, concentrates, tinctures. A tincture is like something you would put like a drop in water or something. Sprays, ointments, and more. One time, Mom told me she preferred a tincture because it didn't burn her eyes, and I freaked out because she's not supposed to use a tincture in your eyes. The company merged with another company called Viva, and they became Octavia Wellness. And what they do is they go around the Bay Area, and they go to senior centers. And what used to be something that was kept very quiet, now they have standing room only meetings. The facilities are helping them help the seniors navigate this. And many of the older folks that are now involved are much happier. They're less apprehensive, and they're
Food bill went up. Do you think?
the munchies, right? And
Do you think they're getting stoned, the old folks?
Well,
Or are they just getting a little bit of buzz?
the way she described it in the article, it's more of a little buzz. Yeah. They're not becoming like when I was in college. We would like get Pudgy's sheet pizza. We'd watch Star Trek reruns, and like.
Is that a big night?
Well, that was every night in Binghamton.
Big night at Binghamton. A Pudgy's pizza,
especially in the wintertime. So that's what caught my eye. It's a niche company. It's been funded, and she's raising some more money, and it's called Octavia Wellness. So I thought it was kind of a fun little.
No, the marijuana industry seems to be
intriguing,
taking off.
Yeah.
As quickly as the acceptance of marriage equality, I think, almost.
Hopefully. I like the trend, and I'd like to be able to go to Massachusetts, which is so close to our upstate house.
You can walk.
Just go over, get you a brownie. Bring it back.
Well, and I want a topical on my knee. See if that works.
I would actually think that might be interesting to experiment with.
Our friend Rosie in Telluride, she had made some mention of that, and actually I should contact her and see, because I think she had sprained her thigh or something skiing, and she said she'd rubbed, and she was reluctant about it, but she said it helped. So
I'd be curious.
Yeah, I would too. What caught mine is my eye was more of a business thing, which I thought was kind of odd. And the headline, it comes from Priceonomics, which they actually did a story about the work John and I did at Subaru. And ever since, and I was unaware of this I guess it's a digital newsletter or a magazine, Pressonomics.
Yeah, I've never seen a print version of that.
And
so I think you're right.
great stories each week. So this one I saw that caught my eye was, when do you outgrow IKEA?
Do you ever outgrow IKEA? There's always things you can buy at IKEA, right?
Well, and it says if you're a 20-something, you may have already had this happen, the awkward moment when you realize all your friends have the same, pinch-on coffee table from IKEA, or the Ufalaf. Everybody's got the Ufalaf light or whatever the heck they call it. It says the Swedish brand's reputation for stocking stylish furniture and selling it at low prices has made it a one-stop shop for cash-strapped students. Particularly getting their first apartment. So they went to 10,000 different anonymous, they took all this data of people that bought retail and did a survey, and to find out as to when optimally people outgrow IKEA. Do you want to guess what age it was? This is when you'll stop buying IKEA usually.
If I said 34?
Did you read ahead?
No, it's just a total guess, but I'm guessing
34 is the age you start to outgrow IKEA.
The only reason I said that is because I remember that was about the age when we began looking at furniture stores.
Well, and they said, so what happens is between 24 and 34, or your 20s and 30s, is when you really you shop at places like IKEA. And they call it the 10-year span, or the IKEA decade. And then they say things like more specialized furniture stores, a restoration hardware sort of thing, maybe an Ashley Furniture, Raymore Flanagan, ... And then you'll
Ethan Allen.
And then when you get to your late 40s, 50s, it's Home Depot, Lowe's.
Because you're buying home improvement stuff. Yeah.
And so there's a chart that we placed up there, and it was interesting. They said that, so you can see IKEA is the only one that has in the lowest range of 24 in terms of peak customer age, and the highest was Lowe's and Ashley Furniture at 54. What I thought was weird, there's one 3 down, Crate and Barrel, which I've always found very expensive. I was surprised that the peak age was 31, because I don't know if you've ever shopped at a Crate and Barrel.
Yeah.
I think they're quite expensive. Do you?
We've gotten a number of great pieces of furniture at Crate and Barrel, and
see, I think they're expensive.
Depends on what you're buying. We've also, like, back in the day, you'd get a set of 12 champagne glasses for $20, or glassware, stemware, certain things. But they do have furniture too. And you know who private labels for them? Mitchell Gold.
Oh, really? Mitchell Gold just opened up a store in King of Prussia. It's
so he used to do a lot of Crate and Barrel furniture. Was Mitchell Gold furniture, just private labeled Crate and Barrel. So
Mitchell Gold seems to be giving restoration hardware a run for their money. A little more stylish. So essentially, it says the Swedish brand started in the Mid-Atlantic states. I know their first store was in Philly with brick and mortar, but 8 of the top 10 states are in the West Coast and Midwest for sales. And they said they think it's more of a mindset. Would you guess what the number 1 state is for IKEA sales?
Would I be able to guess?
Yeah.
Is it obviously California? No.
No, it's not. California's up there. Oregon.
Oregon's
number 1. Last is Idaho, which is weird because they're right next
to each other.
But anyway, I just thought, they go through all this, and there's so many data sets they went through, but essentially it laid it all out if you were looking at trying to.
That's actually a fast for you and I.
Market to people, yeah.
Save that, because that's we should be talking to the stores that are the certain age and above, right?
Exactly. So, and today, December 31st, it's New Year's, or it's New Year's Eve. Are you doing anything?
Are we doing Day in History?
Yeah, is that what we're doing?
Those who fail to learn from history are forced to repeat it. Enjoy this lesson from Tim. And remember, the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Tim.
I should have labeled this history.
Yeah, it's New Year's.
I just labeled it Happy New Year. We were losing it already.
Now we're not losing it.
Okay. It's New Year's Eve, and did you know in Mexico they eat a grape?
Just one?
Every hour, or for every chime of the bell at midnight for good luck. And in Brazil they wear white. We watch a ball drop in Times Square, and that started in 1907 after fireworks were outlawed.
And if you're in Times Square to watch that ball drop, you better be wearing Depends.
Depends, because you know where to pee. It's National Champagne Day also. Do you know the song Old Lang Syne? I don't know this. I know the song, but I don't know the words. Do you?
To all acquaintance be forgot, and never shall use that. I don't.
Yeah, no one.
And Old Lang Syne.
And other than that, not a lot happened. I'll go through it quick. There's not a lot happened on the 31st. Although in 1695, a window tax was imposed in Britain which resulted in many windows being bricked up, and a lot of them have stayed bricked up. So there's a couple of pictures of
You had to pay a tax?
tax if you had a window, so people bricked up the windows. It's a little bit of them throwing tea, like us throwing the tea in the harbor.
This is where
Government's crazy.
Well, this is where this is where a Trump or a Trump supporter who rattles and says too much regulation. This is where I say you're damn right.
Well, in Canada,
Breaking up a window.
in Canada, in the maritime provinces, my brother, I think I mentioned this once before, a lot of houses don't have front steps. So you'll
if
see
you
all
had a
these
front
houses
step-
without front steps, and you get more tax if you have a front entranceway. So they took the front steps off, so the taxes would be lower.
There's always a way around, right?
Yep. 1841, the state of Alabama enacted the first dental legislation. Surprise.
Dental?
Yeah, it was the first Dental Practice Act, which regulated the practice of dentistry in the
Where you
U.S.
find these pictures.
So they relegated the dental practices in the U.S. It was the first state. 1857, Britain's Queen Victoria decided to make Ottawa the capital of Canada. She's a looker, huh?
That's her older days.
Queen Victoria.
She was actually rather attractive in her younger days when she was.
Oh, she was?
Yeah, when she was married to Albert, who passed away sadly, and that's the whole years and years of her wearing black and the nation in mourning. She was actually,
I'm trying to look through that to see pretty, but I don't. Lincoln signed an act admitting West Virginia to the Union in 1862. 1891, New York's immigration depot opened at Ellis Island, which provided improved facilities for the massive number of immigrants and arrivals.
You and I have vowed to go there.
Yeah, that's 2017.
And then you and I we'll have a day where we do that and Liberty Island. But this is a half day visit here because the restored Hall of Arrivals is amazing supposedly.
And then maybe you could take me to Brooklyn. Did you know Brooklyn spent its last day at a separate entity in 1897 before it became part of New York City?
1897? It was that late?
Yeah.
Wow.
Guy,
Brooklyn's a cool borough, by the way. Oh yeah. Remember the taxidermy museum?
take me to the Kitty Cat Museum.
It's gone. It's shut down.
So you shut that down like you shut down the
Yeah, I
Liberace
feel like every museum we go to, I better not go to the Met. Okay.
Guy Lombardo and his Royal Canadians played Old Lang Syne, speaking of that, for the first time in 1929. General Motors became the first U.S. corporation to earn more than $1 billion in a single year in 1955. Wow. It was an old Bel Air.
Bel Air's that's a classy looking car, huh?
Yep. 1974, I didn't realize this was this late. Private U.S. citizens were allowed to buy gold for the first time.
What year was it?
More than 40 years. 1974. And I always remember that as a little kid with Bugs Bunny. Remember they were going to Pismo Beach and they found all that gold?
Yeah.
And 1978, Taiwanese diplomats took their colors down for the final time at the embassy flagpole in D.C. The event marked the end of diplomatic relations with the U.S.
Until,
of course, now. So I've got Bye-Bye Taiwan, 1978.
Hello,
Taiwan, 2017. There's Trump talking to the
I tell you, like you and I talked about this, again, it's one of those things where you scratch your head, where it's not like he's crazy when he says we sell billions of dollars of technology and weaponry to Taiwan. Why not say hello now and then?
So what happened? What happened in science?
Week in science.
Don't be blinded with science. Here's what you need to know from the Week in Science, according to John. It's poetry in motion.
It's poetry in motion. Okay. January 1st of 1984 was the very end of the 10-year settlement and lawsuit that the Justice Department brought against AT&T to break up Ma Bell.
Oh, really?
And what I love about this map that I found is, do you remember these are the Bell companies, the regional companies that opened up after Ma Bell. You and I had Snetco, that one up on the right there, and then 9X.
Southern New England.
Southern New England
Telephone,
yeah.
Looks like it's just Connecticut.
Broke up the monopoly. AT&T, the company itself, later spun off into Lucent Technologies, which you still have around today. But that was a 10-year government-sanctioned monopoly. And I'm going to say this before we move on. Don't you miss it? It worked.
Yeah.
You pick up a phone nowadays, if it's one of those internet phones, crackling, your connection drops. We had great phone service. I mean, it might have been pricey, but... Also on January 1st, in 1818, Mary Shelley published the novel Frankenstein.
That old?
It's from 1818, yeah.
I didn't realize that.
And she published it anonymously in London with 500 copies. She was only 21 when it came out. She started writing Frankenstein when she was 18 and finished it when she was, she was 16, I'm sorry. It was 18. Yeah, 18. She finished it 2 years later. And it came out of a discussion she had with Lord Byron. They were at a villa of his, and they were talking about something back in the Victorian time called galvanism. Galvanism was this kind of hokey science of reanimating dead matter and bringing people back to life. And they were having this conversation about how people believed in this. And he said, you should write a book about it. You should do something. So she wrote a novel about she wrote Frankenstein, and he wrote a thing about a vampire.
Wow.
So it was two classic horror things came out of that discussion. Born on January 2nd, 1920, one of my formative authors growing up with science fiction was none other than Isaac Asimov, who was also a biochemist and had a PhD from Columbia University, where he taught biochemistry actually at Boston University as well, and with medicine as well. He's most known for these two books I put up there, I, Robot and something called the Foundation Trilogy. My younger sister Laura knows him because I took her to a science fiction convention once, and he was one of the guests of honor. And he sees her, and we're like, "Can we have a picture with you, Isaac?" "Oh, sure." He sees Laura, comes over, puts his arm right around her, and that hand starts going down, and just see her slap the hand away. She goes, that science
Dirty old
fiction
man.
author of yours is a pig.
Well, look at him. That picture of him.
Yeah, he apparently, I mean, I love those mutton chops. You can go back to Victorian England with that one, right? On January 3rd, another birthday, born in 1910, is Joy Adamson. Now, do you remember a book called Born Free?
Yeah.
Okay, well, this is where it all came from. So she lived in Kenya. She collected many botanical specimens, did watercolor paintings of them, and basically studied the plants and the plant life of that area. But life changed in 1956 when a new baby lioness cub was delivered to the compound that she lived in, and she and her husband raised the cub, Elsa, and in doing proved that man could raise a wild animal to then be reinserted into their environment without harm. So they let Elsa go into the environment, and she lived, and she did great. They later did that with a baby cheetah as well. Here's the part that gets me. She was killed in northern Kenya
By gorilla.
by a servant in a wage dispute. So she's around lions and cheetahs. She's in Africa, but you owe me. Boom. She gets nailed that way.
Is she a Brit?
Austrian.
Oh, okay.
She was from Austria. And last but not least, one of my favorite products in the world was invented by this man. His name is Aaron Bunny Lapin, and it's none other than America's a lot of people call it one of our 100 great consumer items, Ready Whip. Do you remember Ready Whip?
Yeah.
So whipped cream in a can was like this new thing, and when it first came out, the milkman used to sell it. Remember how your milkman would come and you'd have an order form? Well, Ready Whip used to be delivered into your milk box, and everybody thought it was the greatest thing since sliced bread, and it still sells today. The company that manufactures it now, ConAgra, doesn't just make that. They also make a very strange bunch of other things. Valves, caulk, adhesives, foam rubber products, and insulation.
Sure, you got to diversify.
And Ready Whip. So
Yeah, you gotta
I wonder how much of the product line bleeds into Ready Whip. I don't know.
You have to diversify, Nash.
Yeah. So that's the week in science.
Business birthdays.
Everyone does celebrity birthday greetings, but the Focus Group is the only show in the universe that celebrates business birthdays.
So Diane Simone Michelle Haffen, or we know her as Diane von Furstenberg, happy birthday. She's 70 or 71 today. There's two different dates listed.
I find that, Tim, when I research this stuff, I go to 3 different things, and the date will be off
the
by a
dates
day.
are off.
Yeah.
But so she's either happy 70th or happy 71st. But Diane von Furstenberg, and she's famous for the wrap dress. She dressed Michelle Obama for the 2009 White House Christmas card. She actually also designed most of the shirts that Hillary Clinton wore during the presidential campaign this past 2016. Many celebrities wear her outfits, such as Madonna, Gwyneth Paltrow, J-Lo, Susan Sarandon, the Duchess of Cambridge. She's known as the most marketable woman since Coco Chanel, and one of the most powerful women in the world, according to Forbes. And you and I, 5 years ago, was it 2011?
Yes, we found that on the 2011 archive, yeah.
When we had Tim Gunn visit us.
Right after Memorial Day.
Told us a story about Diane von Furstenberg. And I think, we're going to hear the audio of that story about Diane.
And before we went to break, Tim Gunn had mentioned that he had a great Diane von Furstenberg story. I do.
So without further ado.
It's actually a very sweet story, though I'll admit it's kind of an odd story, too. Diane,
the best.
Well, Diane and I were judging a fashion competition, and it was being held at the Hammerstein Ballroom here in New York on 34th Street.
Oh, I love that space.
Yeah, it's a great space. And we were there early, as we always are. I mean, we're always early wherever we have to go. And there were a lot of cocktails, and I had a little nip of something, and I think Diane had a little more than that. And she came over to me and she said, "Why is there no food at these events? There's always all this booze, but there's no food." And then she leaned over and she said, in her languorous voice, "I need a hot dog." And I thought, is this some kind of signal or metaphor or something? Because don't look at me. So then she repeated, she said, "Do you think we can find a hot dog?" And I said, "Well, there's probably a vendor out on 34th Street. So she said, "But I have to tell you, I have no money." And I said, "Don't worry about it. I'll treat you to a hot dog." So out onto 34th Street we went, though she plowed forward to her bottle green Bentley to tell her driver that we were going off in search of a hot dog. And I thought to myself, the driver doesn't have any money? I mean, I was happy to treat her to a hot dog. Don't get me wrong, but I thought...
The bottle green Bentley,
yes.
too.
So we can't find a vendor. We end up the corner of 8th Avenue and 34th Street where there is the Tick-Tock Diner.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
So we walk in, and there are a couple of steps that you have to go up. And Diane, as soon as we're in the door, Diane bellows into the room, "I need a hot dog." And I mean, even I'm blanching a bit. I'm thinking, well, this is really not. She doesn't understand these places. She's probably used to walking into her kitchen in her big Connecticut mansion, saying, "I need a hot dog," and pow,
blue
it
room or
appears.
green room or red
right,
room.
exactly, with a bun to match. So
Bun to match,
I said, "Diane, I think we probably should sit." "I don't want to sit. I just want a hot dog. Anyone, I need a hot dog." So then, in fact, we do sit, and she says, it's an emergency. I need a hot dog right now. She's getting the hot dog. "Do you want anything else? Do you want some French fries?" "Oh, I'd love some French fries." "And maybe some onion rings, too." And then she said, "Oh, and some pickles." Pickles. I thought she's been in a diner before. So she barely eats. She
Now,
eats
did
like
you
a little
get
bird.
anything?
Oh, I mean, I joined her, of course, and was happy to. I didn't want her to eat alone. But then as we're getting up, and of course, we're quite a sight, because as you said, Tim, she made quite a scene in Malden Books. Well, there she is at the Tick-Tock Diner sitting in the window. So it was not only in the diner, but on the sidewalk, there was quite a crowd. So when we're getting up to leave, two young women come over to us and say, and again, she barely touched anything. She was a little bird. So she barely touched anything. These two women come over and they want a photograph. And she says, no, we're very late. We don't have time. But here, have some onion rings. And she hands them the basket of onion rings. And I thought, they probably took it home and...
They preserved it under a bell jar.
It's on eBay right now.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm sure it is. So, and I wrote about this in my book, Guns, Golden Rules. And I said, I don't even know why I'm writing this, except it's a sweet story. And I thought, if Diane reads this, and I mean this with all honesty, she's going to say... I don't remember that.
No, I didn't do that.
Because it's how she navigates the world. For me, it was one of the most bizarre moments I've ever participated in.
So that was...
I need a hot dog.
Tim, now you and I were just at the Tick-Tock Diner today. And
Before we come in to visit with John and Garrett and record the show, we usually go to the Tick-Tock Diner, and it's...
I wanted a hot dog, and you said no. I said we should have a hot dog in honor of Diane von Furstenberg.
You don't have to listen to me. I'm not a hot dog fan personally, but so there you go. That's a good business birthday, and I'm glad it intersected with something we did with Tim Gunn. Hey, it's the Focus Group, John Nash with Tim Bennett. It's the last show of 2016. The last time will be, Tim, wait, look, in Telluride, or wherever this winter wonderland set is. We're going to take a really quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be welcoming back to the show Cathy Renna, so please stay with us.
Brought to you by the Volkswagen Golf GTI. Named one of Car and Driver's 10 Best, 10 years in a row. Focus on the savvy side of 9 to 5 with the Focus Group.
And in business a week, I got more money than I know what to do with.
Listen, laugh, and learn with Tim and John.
Herrera Rocher. He is doing well.
Sisters.
Hey, Happy New Year and welcome back to the Focus Group. Tim Bennett here, as always with my good friend and co-host, John Nash. We're all business except where we're not, but we're business right now, and maybe business and politics. We've got joining us Cathy Renna, who's managing partner and founder of Target Q, and one of the foremost, I would say, publicists or PR firms that specializes in outreach and working with LGBT nonprofits and profits. Would that be the right way of saying it? You got a long bio.
We're starting to do some more of that profit stuff.
Nonprofit and for-profit. So profits isn't the right word?
Well, not for profits mostly, but
see, I was thinking with Trump, I could pretty much say what I want. And
exactly.
So we're beyond fact.
So
Yes.
We're into the realm of the no facts. here.
Cathy was on a couple months ago before the election, and so since the election, we thought as a New Year's wrap up, it would be good to have you on and talk about not only this year, but what gains the LGBT community has made during the Obama administration, and then what we may expect going forward, or what we should look for going forward, and of course we'll get it all finished in 20 minutes.
Sure.
So welcome to the show.
Because it's all going to be undone in about 20 minutes after the inauguration. I'm just kidding. It's really, it's jarring. Last time I was on, and up until the election, we were all just getting ready for the next great administration and a continuation of his legacy, and more hard work, but certainly more progress. And I think that, unfortunately, to be totally serious, I think what a lot of people feel right now is scared. Right after the election, saw, all over Facebook, and I had about half a dozen people that I know personally that I saw posts that actually alarmed me enough to pick up the phone and talk to them. So it was shocking, but it's also really frightening for a lot of folks in our community. And as it has sunk in, as he has started to make some of these horrifying cabinet appointments, I think it's time for the whole community to sort of take stock on where we are, what the possibilities are, and what we really need to do to really regroup, because that's what we need to do.
That point's where I'm at. I don't need to litigate the election. I don't need to revisit what happened. They're going to be looking at the numbers for years. They'll be figuring out the causes. But the fact of the matter is, he won the Electoral College. He won the popular vote. But we are a country that elects our presidents via the Electoral College, which was the only thing that counted that night. And I read a fascinating article where the person said you could have two opinions. You could either be the person looking backward, trying to figure out how to make this not happen, or you could be the person who says, well, this is it, and we got to put boots on the ground and stay engaged and figure out where we're going to pick our fights. And I'm in B. I'm like, okay, that's fine. And I'm also optimistic that we may be surprised in some areas, and surprise is going to be the name of the game. It may be good, it may be bad.
I think that's the thing. We don't know. It's all the whole election was so unpredictable. The result was obviously not predicted, and now we're looking at, to me, what it feels like is, someone who became an activist and kind of cut their teeth during the Reagan years. Like, it feels like the Reagan years, except we have social media, but we also have a really totally different culture, and a lot of that is the business culture. I don't see businesses, running away from the community after. Nope. Decades now at this point of support, and that's going to make a huge difference given who became president, because he thinks he's Mr. Businessman, and that's going to have, I think that's going to have an impact when he starts to get pushback, like what's happening in North Carolina with HB2.
John and I, we were talking at lunch a little bit, and my thought on the Trump thing is every single president has been tested, whether it is the Sandy Hook shooting, whether Katrina. It was Katrina. Mm-hmm. There's going to be a natural disaster. There's going to, unfortunately, be probably another mass shooting. And I'm curious as to how Trump will handle that. And I think that's when we'll really see what's going on. Do you agree with that? Or because if he, a lot of people always say he really was just a Democrat in disguise. And he's fooled a lot of his supporters. Right. Or do you really think he's going to be as hard-nosed as he campaigned?
See, here's the problem. I think, and I'm like you. I don't want to sit here and Monday morning quarterback it to death. Democrats are great at that. We're so smart, and we want to analyze things. But I think if we just even briefly take a look at what happened, I don't think he just wanted to know he could win. Like, it's such an ego trip with him. It's unbelievable that this guy is like a huge narcissist. And what terrifies me is who he's surrounded by. Because at a certain point, Alec Baldwin's incredible depiction aside, it is kind of rings true that he doesn't know what he's getting himself into. I lived in D.C. for 10 years. He has no idea how big the government is and how it works. and what it's going to take to try and do some of the things that
Well, it doesn't run like a business.
and his cabinet of Dr. Caligari want to try and do. I mean, it's really
I haven't heard that reference in
absolutely
ages. I love-
horrifying.
I
Yeah,
know exactly what you're
I like horror
talking
movies.
about. Dr.
Dracula.
Caligari, it's a famous classic horror
totally
movie.
That. And I think that's the scary thing, because what Obama did in terms of progress for the community, a lot of it is. He did, executive orders. He changed policies that he could change as president that didn't require the Congress. So I think, when you combine that with this sense that people are truly afraid, that we're seeing spikes in hate crimes, and we're seeing essentially an incoming president who gave people permission to be sexist and racist and homophobic and misogynist and Islamophobic and every other kind of, phobic you can think of. And that has given his followers permission to feel like, well, that's okay. I mean, that's why when I wrote that piece, I wrote a piece for Huffington Post called "A Vote for Trump is a Hate Crime." And I got a lot of trolls that came after me. But I had a lot of people say, you know what, that's exactly what it felt like. Because I was afraid. I mean, I walked out, my car was vandalized. Somebody scrawled the F word on my Hillary Clinton bumper sticker. And, I live in a super progressive town. But I'm hearing from, kids who are in school who are, being told that their parents aren't going to be married anymore, or that their parents are going to be sent back to Mexico, or, boys saying things to young girls that are just completely sexist and inappropriate. And they're all using the excuse of, well, Trump's our president now.
So do you believe it was a hate crime if you voted for Trump?
I think if you voted for Trump, you contributed to really a demeaning of our culture and our society, and agreeing with him that certain people should be more valued than others. And I don't think that's a democratic principle. I don't think it's an American value. And I really feel that way. And it's really hard. I mean, I'm pretty lucky nobody in my family voted for Trump. But, it has made for such division within families and communities and schools. And it's only going to create more division the more he does. It's really, really scary.
I'm hoping not, because there's been a lot of press about this exact thing about, and there was was it Maureen Dowd? Her sister and I think her family, shortly after the election, she wrote an article saying my sister is one of the deplorables or something.
That sounds
and it was a really thoughtful interview where she talked to her folks and her sister, and their reasons were, they were so far removed from what we're talking about.
Yeah.
It was about change. It was about looking at what seemed to be this rickety system that didn't benefit anybody. It was about economic backwaters. And that's where I kind of fall in the line of, I just think that was that was the point, that they wanted something different.
That's fine. But they did it, and they voted for this guy despite the fact that he has all of those other things. They looked past somebody who's basically admitted to being a serial sexual abuser. They put it past somebody who would mock someone who's disabled. They put it past someone who thinks that black and brown people really don't have as much value as the rest of us. Like, you can't separate those things out for me. When I vote for somebody, I'm not going to vote for somebody.
No, you and I.
Even if I want change, even if I feel like the economy has been rough for a lot of people, but I think he's duped them. I really do. I mean, look at who he's putting in his cabinet. It's like projection. Everybody that he's putting in, and all the things that he was doing, are all the things he accused Hillary Clinton of. It's extraordinary.
Yeah.
Well,
half of Goldman Sachs is.
It's not an E word; it's an H word. It's hypocritical. I mean, but see, this is what we all see all the time.
Impeachable.
The hypocrisy on all ends of the spectrum is just galling. And yes, he is doing a lot of this stuff too.
So for all of us moving forward, though, and this reminds me of Michelangelo's book, Michelangelo Signorelli's book, It's Not Over.
Absolutely.
I think prior to the election cycle getting tuned up before Labor Day, there was some sort of discussion that maybe the LGBT community, we got marriage and we're fine. Everything's going to be fine. I'm being very, very general at this point, but we all said, where are the leaders within our community? Where are the leaders within the LGBT community? HRC's been silent, it seems. That might just
the election.
I just don't seem to. They don't seem to me to be as visible as they used to be. That could be just me or where I'm looking. But so going forward, what do you think this will be Do you think it's a rallying cry for the LGBT community?
It better be. I mean, I've been talking to lots of individuals and lots of folks at organizations. I was in Washington just not even a couple weeks ago at the LGBT Victory Fund. They had a international leadership conference, and let's just say they had to kind of scrap the program and start over after the election because it was going to be about getting more diverse appointments and getting more LGBT candidates elected, and it turned into a, how do we start the resistance, and what do we do in the face of all this, and how do we also work across communities? Because one of the things that I think the LGBT community really needs to do, because we weren't as targeted as others, really. If you
not really.
look at Trump and his upside down rainbow flag with the LGBT scrawled with a Sharpie, whatever. Bottom line is there wasn't really anything super overt. There are some things about, marriage, I think he's so squishy on that, he won't touch it for probably a lot of reasons, like, Peter Thiel sitting 5 feet away from him and he's gay.
Well, also, like, I just, when he had the 60 Minutes interview, I mean, he was asked point blank, and he's like, you know what, it's settled. I'm moving on from that.
Yeah, but then when they asked him about women's reproductive rights, he said that he would get it overturned. He doesn't understand the Supreme Court. The guy doesn't get it. Like,
but
you can't just overturn things. Like, he's going to appoint judges.
That's kind of the key to what's going to go on moving forward. We have a government that functions with these branches, and the most powerful man in the Senate outside of Mitch McConnell right now is our very own Chuck Schumer as minority leader for the Democrats. And the minority can get a lot done by doing nothing.
Yeah, we learned that.
Yeah. So I just think that I look at it. I'm trying to look. I've looked at this since a day or two after the election as a positive. Complacency in a democracy is not a good thing. If you took your rights for granted,
that's right.
If you took the fact, and we've been through, all of us have been through, the HIV/AIDS crisis, getting the government to pay attention. So this is not exactly unknown territory to me to have an administration that may be hostile-ish or uncaring about some of our issues, or best word of all, inaccessible.
Yeah, inaccessible.
And access is key nowadays, right? So I think it's actually an interesting opportunity for the millennials and for other generations who might not have had to have these pitched battles, figure it out and say, okay,
Well, challenge is they've grown up in a culture that's much more accepting, and we grew up in a culture that wasn't. So we were fighting from the beginning, and that's not to say that there aren't a ton of kids who are fighting from the beginning still now. It's super true. But I think what we need to do is figure out a way to to move forward and try and make continued progress in the areas that we have been making progress in, and hold back, and resist when it comes up. I mean, for example, some of the changes that Obama made with the Department of Education via executive order and with the Department of Justice, those could very easily be tossed away by Betsy DeVos. She really, this is a woman who thinks reparative therapy is a good thing. So that's problematic. And, these trans kids are going to be at risk and could be at risk like almost immediately. And it wipes away a ton of work he did. I think that's where we need to sort of step up and speak out. And so it's going to be a combination of those things, I think, that hopefully the folks, HRC and the folks who do lobbying and the LGBT, the LGBT caucus in Congress and our allies will continue to fight the good fight that way. But it's really going to be on the ground on very specific issues, whether it's funding from Health and Human Services, which Health and Human Services was completely changed over the course of 8 years with the Obama administration, funding all kinds of research, looking at diverse populations, helping not just in areas related to HIV, but all other kinds of LGBT health issues, including, I have clients, I work with the Family Acceptance Project, and we worked with SAMHSA and HHS and other agencies to create materials for parents with LGBT kids. I don't think that's going to happen with Price. That's not his thing. And never mind housing. What happens to homeless LGBT kids when Ben Carson is in charge of HUD? Ben Carson is probably one of the most homophobic people that he's appointed.
I didn't really, well.
And happy holidays. Sorry, I'm like such a bummer.
But
we have champagne.
I used to be a glass half full girl. Now I think I just drank it all.
What did we used to say? Well, we were taught this. All politics is local.
That's true.
And I think that the Republicans need to be congratulated on a decade-plus long effort to fill state houses, governorships, and eventually the House of Representatives. And it's you're talking town level, county, state, all the way up. And Democrats have been very fixated on the White House. But in fact, these smaller moving gears are the ones that actually start getting stuff done. I do still take a lot of optimism out of the fact that a lot of the articles I'm reading about states in particular look at clean energy. Many states that have already initiated an agenda to promote solar or alternate forms of energy have already said, regardless of what DC is saying, we're continuing this because we know that our populations are going to be affected by global warming or climate change. Perhaps we could take that and say that might be the same for the respect of our rights or things that already happened in the last 8 or 10 years.
I totally agree. I mean, I think that's kind of where like I said, the ground game is for local and state LGBT organizations. The challenge is they're not as well funded or as well.
True.
They don't have the infrastructure that our national organizations do. So it's going to take some real thought and real partnering and investment in those organizations, and that's going to be, I think, a significant shift for the community, and but something we have to do. I mean, I met with the folks who run the New York City Anti-Violence Project, and in fact, New York City today announced that they are creating like an app and a Facebook page and all this other stuff, so you can report, anti or any kind of hate crime. I mean, if you're treated for whoever you are. In public, like on subways and buses, et cetera. And I met with them, and they also house the National Coalition of Anti-Violence Projects. There are 50-something of them around the country, in most major cities and in smaller cities too. But most of them don't even have staff. So having to deal with these issues on the ground level, because, the institutional stuff, I think we've made a lot of progress. We probably won't get non-discrimination in employment through, but I think as a community we've made so much cultural progress nationally and in the
There's
big
actually
urban
some
centers.
interesting stuff happening with some circuit court cases that are interpreting previous law to say that it actually does include. Have you read about this? There's the Walmart case that's moving through.
That's right.
So, and then on gun control. You read about all the lawyers that are giving their time pro bono, millions of dollars worth of legal advice.
People are giving tons of money to.
And I look at that and I smile and I'm like, guess what? Now if the lawyers lawyer up,
that's right.
you
might
may
revitalize
get
the progressive movement.
That's
one would hope.
That's exactly where I'm going on this. That's where there was an article written about what had happened in the 80s with Reagan and Thatcher. And they said, as tough as it was for minorities, it really was a great time for us to rally.
Absolutely.
And they said from an arts standpoint, they talk about music, they talk about theater, protests, and the social, the social statement that we could make as a community was much more forefront. And it seems, and that's why I mentioned it earlier, it seems as if once marriage equality got here, everything's kind of great. And I know Michelangelo, when we talked earlier, he had said, we need to be careful because the women's movement is going through this.
Absolutely.
Whereas, we still don't have an equal rights amendment, right?
That's absolutely right.
So.
And reproductive rights are, under attack at the state level, right?
Yep.
It's going to.
Look at Ohio.
Ohio just signed that crazy bill. I mean, it could have been crazier, but
and Texas too. Like we're having funerals for fetuses. I mean, come on. It's just
but see that's.
I don't mean to laugh, but I don't.
How that even got written as a piece of, but that comes all the way down to a representative in a county. It's all politics is local, so. I think that there's a lot to be learned. I'm in everybody's camp saying enough of this ring in your hands and who did what email and WikiLeaks and all this stuff. He won fair and square, and even if you count in all this other stuff, he still won the Electoral College. So I don't even think it's like. But now I'm like, okay, let's move on and look at there's the bright side of this, which is and I know I sound stupid saying that, or maybe I don't, but there's always opportunity somewhere, and for our community. I think it reinvigorates us and makes us say, we have this, you're not taking it away.
I hope it does. Yeah. I really hope
it does. I believe it will.
I'm ready.
We're resilient.
I'm ready to get out in the street. Right, exactly. Exactly. I mean, I think one of the other things is that, if you look at this from a global perspective, and when I was in D.C. at that Victory Fund conference, there were folks from all over the world, elected officials, openly gay elected officials. There was a woman who was the first openly gay congressperson in Guatemala. Not easy to be an out lesbian in Congress in Guatemala. And so, there was, a little perspective, right?
Yep.
But I think the reality is we're seeing this as a trend. I mean, Trump, there are elections in Europe happening.
Oh, we were talking about this
They're riding
more.
the wave of Trump. We lost Renzi in Italy. I mean, he finally got civil unions for my people. And he's
France,
gone now.
France is next, right?
Yeah, France. You got Germany. You have Austria. They're concerned about the Dutch.
Yep.
And
the Netherlands. I heard that
Denmark.
this morning.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's.
History is like a sine wave, right?
Yeah. Well,
and
when
if
people are scared,
if you watch the wheel go
get to
around long
right.
enough, you'll see some of the same patterns coming back.
We are doomed to repeat.
And I will say one pattern that I learned when I was in college that I've had reinforced over and over is you can't go wrong giving somebody a job and a decent wage. And when you don't have that, other things can enter the thought process.
Yeah.
And ways to blame things also enter the thought process. So
I hate to say it, Nash, but we had that crazy psychic on. Was it?
She rambled. We had a psychic on one. She rambled.
She predicted all this.
This was like
really?
6 years ago.
I was going to say maybe even 2008.
Yeah, and
we were
she
looking
went
at her like
bum.
crazy, but talking about this world order is going to change and the whole collapse
This is
of the
gonna
financial
change.
system and how we were
Liberal-
going to
yeah.
be more authoritarian. And she went through this whole thing. We're like, oh, she's crazy.
Well, I'm not surprised.
She could have
to
been
see
reading Orwell's
backlash to-
1984 back to
Right,
us, of
exactly.
course. I mean, there is that possibility. Like,
it's not
does
su-
that sound familiar? Yeah.
It's not surprising to see backlash to 8 years of Obama. I mean, look what he put up with.
Yeah.
To try and get anything done. And
Yeah,
the attacks were awful, if you were paying any attention from the very beginning. So,
And there is the flip side is, I was talking to my sister who runs her husband's practice. He's a doctor. And I'm not sure how she voted, but I do know how disgusted she was with the red tape, the cost, and the idiocy of what they would deal with as a medical practice.
Oh, yeah.
So she looks at she looks at Obamacare and a lot of that stuff from a very different perspective of having to actually deal with it, implement it, make less money, So you can see how that,
right. And he never said it was going to be perfect right away.
no.
And, it's a huge, huge thing to
as a social program.
have as a social program and create so much change, and you're going to have to look at it. But, what troubles me is, Trump oversimplifies, and we're just going to
repeal it, and you're going to have the best care in the
Build
world.
the wall, lock her
It's
up.
going to be great. It's going to be great. It's going to be great.
Well, he was a cipher for the times, right? If you could get down to 140 characters, you're in.
It's unbelievable.
And I don't talk in 140
as my
characters
family in Italy
personally.
said, we already did that whole thing where we elected a, multi-millionaire media mogul.
What was it? Oh, who's always
Berlusconi.
who was always being
womanizer, et cetera.
sued
Yeah.
and so
It was in all kinds of
Cathy, you're going to have to come back in the new year.
Going to the inauguration?
I haven't really decided yet if I'm going to the protest the day after the inauguration. I am not invited this
I
year.
thought maybe you got invited. You're
Although
gonna
I
dance.
may get invited because they're so desperate.
Do you know that
they'll take anybody now?
Do you know that outgoing congressmen and senators are given tickets to the inauguration? First, they're moved out of their office 7 weeks in advance, and they're in a cafeteria somewhere with the reduced staff. So if you're leaving Congress, you go to a cafeteria first with your books and stuff. Then they're given tickets to the inauguration. And one guy who was retiring from the House of Representatives said he gets the ticket and he realizes it's a folding chair. Like, I don't know how far back from the grandstand in the Capitol. He said they're looking for a constituent to give the tickets to because
Nobody wants them. I went to
15 below.
both Obama
well,
inaugurations.
he wanted to go to the inauguration. He just didn't want to sit in a folding chair.
Well, they can't get anybody to perform. It's going to be really interesting to see who shows up.
We'll show.
I think they should get those Freedom Girls.
There's a huge action.
Remember the Freedom Girls, those little
There's a
kids that
huge
did the
action next day.
dances for Trump? I think they did Freedom Girls back. Anyway, Cathy, you have to come back in the new year. Thank you
Absolutely.
for helping us conclude 2016. A very interesting year, very interesting last 8 years. All good and some bad too. But anyway, John Nash, Tim Bennett, we want to thank Cathy Renna again.
New Year.
It's targetq.com. And it's Q as in CUE, targetq.com. We'll be right back after this quick break.
Brought to you by the redesigned Volkswagen Passat, where family happens. Visit VW.com to learn more. Now, back to the focus group with Tim and John.
Glamour today is nothing but a tight skirt, loose hips, and wet lips.
An entertaining look at the world of business.
Make it work. Make it work. Make it work.
That was Tim Gunn. And he told us a story earlier about Diane von Furstenberg.
On a hot dog.
Happy New Year, everybody. It's December 31st, the end of 2016, and that means resolutions. We want to thank Cathy Renna for joining us from Target Q. We'll have her on after the inauguration to see where we stand in the first quarter.
One of my resolutions is to be glass half full.
Half full. So I was going to ask you, so while we just got a few minutes before we wind up the year, do you have any resolutions for the new year?
Well, I'm starting my last 9 months of animation classes, so I'm resolving to put as much effort into the last 9 as I put into the first 9, which wasn't
a lot of work. What time's your class?
It's the first one for the first semester will be 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Wednesday mornings.
It's before the show.
Yeah, and then I'll meet you at the diner, and then we'll probably like 20 minutes later than I normally.
I don't know about that.
No, they're pretty. This is the Q&A with the instructor, so they're on the clock as well. And my instructor, actually, the new one, Jean-Denis.
Maybe you can try that pizza I heard about.
Yeah, we go to Supreme. That's the one right below Penn Station. So my new instructor is a lead animator at George Lucas's Industrial Light and Magic, so he has a day job. So it's West Coast time, so my class starts at 10. It's really 7 his time. He's got to be out the door by 8 to be at ILM.
Wow.
So
you're going to start your animation again.
The next class is called Acting 1, then there's Acting 2, then there's Portfolio and Polish, and then I'll be...
An animator?
A minted animator, yeah.
You get a new gig?
And now, whenever we watch TV, there's like an animated character in a cartoon, like a commercial or something. Bob goes, "You could do that." You know, the Zantec guy, Zantec. You know, the little fireman or something. It's like
or Digger, the fungus, the toe fungus. Digger.
You know what?
You'll be relegated to. Hey, listen, all money's green.
Well, and I'm sure that if I start doing this, it's going to be little freelance projects and things like that. So
that'll be fun.
So I'm resolved to do that, and I know you're going to nick me on this one, but. I'm only saying it because if you are lighter, you go faster and you can climb hills better. I do need to lose a little bit of weight, not a lot, but it's really for that reason of just performance. And, you know, I like numbers going in one direction, not others. So I think I need to lose like 8 or 10 pounds, which I could probably do in like 2 months. So that's a January.
I know we're going to all live through that. I've said this before. I feel sorry for Bob. He must be a real bear.
No. Losing weight is actually easy. I'm a sweets guy. So you start getting, and that's where I don't get rid of chocolate.
No.
But it's the cakes and the cookies,
which
I love.
Well, that leads into one of mine. So when we had Frank DeCaro on a couple weeks ago.
You downloaded the app Lose It.
Lose It app, and I've started using it. Now, of course, I've been over a few days. I love it.
So you're basically logging your food, right?
Right, and it's something I always said I would never do, which was count calories. But at the end of the day, at the end of the day, that's really what it is about. And so the first week I did it, it was eye-opening to me. You know, Richard first said I was grazing, which I did do. But like the other night, I had a cup of mixed nuts.
Oh my God.
With 720 calories.
Yeah, it's fat and
so I all of a sudden went 200 calories over my daily allowance. So I realized I need to make better choices, which everybody always says is always very easy. But I will tell you, if anybody has seen Frank DeCaro, he's lost 65 pounds since April. And he said he just did it by doing this Lose It app. So I'm going to try that because I think, as you said, losing weight is if you need to is a good thing to do for your health.
As long as it's not onerous. Does the Lose It make it kind of fun? You log your stuff.
If you don't do it, it just says be sure you do it. Make sure you do it. Don't forget to do it. Keep it up. And then it tells you if you go over or you go under, based on you set a goal weight, and it will say you will reach your goal by X if you continue doing this behavior. So I think it's cool. So I'm planning to do that. One thing I also am planning to do, I hope to see more people that I've lost touch with. You and I both
talked about that. Yeah.
And then I wanted to see if there was a possibility of teaching a marketing class somewhere. I wanted to give that a try at one of these, like an adjunct professor or an instructor somewhere.
You know, my mom, I asked her about that one time, and she recommended looking at community colleges.
I've talked to a couple people already, so I'm going to see. I'll see. Maybe there's something. But I thought it would be an introductory marketing class or advertising class. And then, you know, our good friend of ours, Mary Seaton, Corboy, had passed away. And one of the last conversations she and I had, she said she thought that I should do some sort of blog about something. And you and I tell a lot of work stories and whatever, so I thought maybe I'll investigate that. I'm not so sure whether we keep it focus group or whether it's Tim or whether I use a different name.
It's a lot of work. Blogging's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. So anyway, those. But as resolutions go, you get a big list, and then usually by January 3rd,
I think a resolution that we could all agree on, though, is preserving our old photos. And to you and me, an old photo is something that was taken on a Kodak 110 Instamatic back in the 70s, and that's not exactly old like Civil War daguerreotype, but if you've looked at those prints lately, whoa!
Well, and
they're fading and they're blue shifted.
And that came into play in last week's show for me because I don't have any photos. I've got slides, which are just sitting in a box, Christmas photos.
My mom is a good archiver, and I have a lot. I have a great amount of pictures from. Because my mom took pictures when we were kids, the square with the white border. And I'm really trying to be more cognizant of saving the ones I want to scan, scanning them in, and then eventually maybe doing a photo book or something like that. But I don't know how I just think that's one of those things, be aware of that.
Yeah. So we have very attainable goals, I think.
There you go. Well, yeah. Lose it. Take your animation class.
You're going to be an animator. I'm going to write a book. You're going to... Or a blog.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for a great 2016. Everybody have a wonderful new year and enjoy the beginning of the new year. That sounded like have a good...
It's like be safe.
Be safe, yeah. And a big thank you to Volkswagen Group of America that's been with us now for 7 years or going into our 8th year relationship with the brand. We love our new cars. Please check out the Golf All-Track wagon. It is... I really can't say enough good things about driving this.
You're in love with that car, John.
Well, we've driven a lot of different manufacturers, and again, there's just something about this car that I really like. It's all-wheel drive as well, so if you're in the market for all-wheel drive, check out the All-Track. Thank you, and we'll see you in 2017.
It's the Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash. Formerly on Sirius XM Satellite Radio and now accessible on all platforms. Subscribe, like, and rate us on your platform of choice. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com.